One of the things I noticed yesterday, everybody talked about what a magnificent example he was in both giving up his anger to govern inclusively and also leaving power. But he was actually a very good president. He was a faithful representative of all of his people and of his nation and their national interests. And I thought it was amazing, given how long he'd been in prison, how quickly he got up to speed. He made a good decision to keep the people in the government around him, keep them serving while he brought in some of his own people. And he really did a good job as president. And I loved dealing with him. And it was all business. And then we'd do our business and we'd be friends again. Even if we were just on the phone, we'd spend 10 or 15 minutes just talking about personal things, but always after business first.
Do you think you learned a lot from him?
Oh, a lot. He was uncommonly kind to me. The closer we got personally, although, as I said, we continued to have arguments. On a couple of occasions, we had very sharp arguments.
About what?
And we argued about the chairmanship of South Africa over this landmine convention because I wanted to sign it. The United States was doing more than all the other countries in the world to get rid of landmines, and they basically deliberately drew the treaty, some people did, to try to get rid of our anti-tank mines so that only the Europeans ones would be available for purchase. And it made me mad, and Mandela's appointee was the chairman of the commission, but he said, look, he said, we gave them our word we wouldn't change it once they got a final draft, and I'm not going to change it. And I also used to rib him about Cuba. But one of the things I really admired about him is he was fanatically loyal after he became president to the countries that had supported him and the ANC while he was in prison. And I remember one night we were over there probably about 7 years ago around his birthday, and we went to an auction and for his foundation. I took my whole American delegation there, and we participated and raised a lot of money for his foundation. And they had a little auction, and one of the things they were auctioning was a very valuable bottle of rum that Fidel Castro had given him. And Cyril Ramaphosa and some other people were there, and they said, now, President Clinton, you should buy this. In honor of Mandela, you should buy this. So I purchased it at auction, and then I had to give it away before I came back to the United States because I didn't want to violate the embargo.
When you think of his many achievements, people talk about his great capacity for forgiveness. Do you think that's what turned him into such an effective force in truth and reconciliation? Absolutely.
I asked him once, I said, you know, how did you do this? I said, you had to hate those people. Look what they did to you. He said, I was young and strong when I went into prison, and for 11 years I lived on my hatred. Then one day I was breaking rocks, and I thought of all they had done to me and all they had taken from me. They had abused me physically and emotionally. They had taken away from me the right to see my children grow up. It eventually destroyed my marriage. I realized they could take everything except my mind and my heart. He said, those things I decided not to give away. And he looked at me because I was in the middle of all that fight I had with Congress, and he smiled and he said, neither should you. And he was always just saying stuff like that, just bending over backwards, trying to be a true friend.
Did he talk to you about that sadness, though, that must have accompanied him through his life, about the sacrifice that he and his family had made? I mean, he lost his personal life, and he lost a close relationship with many of his family members. That must have troubled him deeply.
It did bother him, but he had an iron will, and he realized that his will first needed to be applied to the mind and heart he had saved, and he really disciplined himself to get over both anger and regret in a hurry. You could see it if you knew him well and you spent a long time with him, you could see these things come up. I mean, I'm one of the few people, I guess, that ever saw him really mad. He was even mad at me a time or two. And he'd just get over it. You could just see his mind kick in. And his iron will, he knew he had to live in the present and think of the future. And it was liberating, just like the forgiveness was liberating. He realized that without forgiveness, he would never be free. And he could never make other people free. And he could never give them permission to forgive and to trust. And, trust is something that's in pretty short supply in the world today. Mandela had it millionfold because he was trusting, and people thought, I can't believe he's trusting us. But he did.
And unlike Martin Luther King, of course, he did embrace armed struggle. You talked about terrorism at the beginning of the interview. Did he talk about that? Because that was a controversial position that he had taken.
He had within the country, but, if my memory serves, the United States was involved in an armed struggle once when we were part of King George's empire. So his view was that at the time there was no way out, and he was young, and like all young people, he was impatient. After all, the people of South Africa had been virtually, if not enslaved, indentured servitude in a violent and repressive way for a long time. But something burned in him when he basically began to grow spiritually after he'd been in prison more than a year. And he realized that the ultimate victory would be for the people of South Africa to be in a democracy that had a chance to work, that had a chance to function. And that in order to do that, he had to demonstrate a whole different kind of leadership and had to adopt a different strategy. And I think he came to that while he was in prison.
I imagine there is a state funeral, and I do imagine that you'll be going to that. If you're called upon to speak, what will you say you'll miss about him most?
I will miss the light that he caused to come on in the lives of everybody he touched. When you were around Mandela, you wanted to be a bigger person. You knew you could be better than you were. You knew that you had to concentrate on the big things and let little things go, and you had to overcome your own resentments. And I watched him do it, almost as if I were inside his brain. For all those years, we became friends, both when he was president and later when we worked on AIDS together for years and years. I will miss that. When he smiled at you, if you looked in his eyes, you knew he was not just smiling, he was looking in your soul, searching around for what was really going on and figuring it out, and he knew just what to say and how to say it. That was an uncommon gift that he gave to everyone he cared about. I will miss that. And people all over the world could see it. They could see it in the way he carried himself and the way he spoke. And it wasn't that he stopped being a citizen, that he stopped having convictions on the issues, that he stopped having disagreements even with his friends. It was that there was a bigger reality, that our common humanity is the thing that matters most and the thing that ought to animate all of our endeavors, personally and publicly.
President Clinton, thank you so much.
Thank you.